I'm going to start with reading something from my book, Aftermath, Bosnia's Long Road to Peace. And first, I should say, I think we're kind of somewhat in the funding block here. I'm a photographer, I'm also a funder, and I think one of the questions that's gone a little bit under the radar here has been the question of funding. You've heard some big numbers passed around. You've heard how Greg, sort of had this one-man engine of, organization and funding and fueling, which is also incredible, but I think it's a really important conversation to have. And so I'm just gonna show you some photos of my work, and then I'm gonna talk about what it takes to be a funder and to have your own nonprofit. And I'm just reading this paragraph because it sums up a lot of my thinking on post-conflict work. I went to Bosnia to cover the aftermath of war, to try to capture the images that are the all too often forgotten companions of the vivid pictures of war itself. I came with the conviction that war is only half the story. I believed and still believe that what happens in the aftermath of war is as newsworthy, if not more so, than the destruction and horror of war. I went to Bosnia with the desire to document that incredibly difficult period when humans move out of war's desperate struggle to survive and begin another equally mighty struggle, that of learning to live again. In the 4 years I spent making the images that would ultimately become this book, I became convinced that we need post-conflict images to remind us of our humanity, to testify that war is not the final word on who we are as human beings, nor the final image of our spirit. And that somewhat sums up my commitment to post-conflict work in many ways. And I'm just gonna show you some pictures now, and then you can bring the lights down, and then I'll talk about nonprofit work. These are images from my work in Bosnia, and Blue Earth was absolutely instrumental. It was the first organization that I approached that I don't know why this is doing this. Pause. They allowed me to raise money that got tax deductions for people who wanted to support the project. I think, I was adding it up, I think I raised maybe $70,000 for the project and the book, which you pretty much, with almost any publisher, have to bring money to get a book published. So having that sponsorship from Blue Earth was really, really important. First funding issue in my life, raising funds by being able to allowing people to get a tax deduction. So these images are just a handful that I've chosen from the Bosnia work to show you. I was struggling at the time. It was sort of early 2000s, post 9/11. All of the focus in photojournalism and documentary work and conflict has always been on conflict photographers. And I really, truly felt there, as a longtime print journalist with always a counter-narrative perspective, I felt there was a more important narrative, or an equally important narrative. And there was no way in coming into photography, like Greg, I was a nobody in photography at the time I started, how could I do anything about this? So I began my own work, and then, which led to starting the Aftermath project. But you can bring the lights down just to look at photos. It's the first image in the book. It's one of the signature images from the project. I'm not going to talk about the photos or what they are. I have a copy of the book here. I'm actually a mini bookstore today. I have several things with me. Can you bring the lights down? I always like looking at photos in a dark room. I won't talk. Yeah, it's okay. So I promise you can, I know you're filming, but film the photos, and then we'll be able to, you can bring lights back up. We'll go back there so you can see that one. My original influence was for fine art, not photography, because I didn't come from the photo world. This was done over 5 years in the post-conflict world of Bosnia. Those words about people learning to live again. It's the Mostar Bridge, the day it was reopened. It had been destroyed during the war. It's the last picture from the book. Those two pictures, when I give lectures about this work, very much represent my journey as a photographer, from the widow looking into the body bags to this widow. And this is the cover of the book, Aftermath, Bosnia's Long Road to Peace. And Yeah, it was. I was not going to put that first image of the widow looking into body bags on the cover of a book because I didn't want people to be able to look at it and go, oh yeah, I know that story, I know what that's about. So this image relates in so many ways to the project, and there's a lot of stories behind that, but I'm not talking about my work so much today. This is what led. There's another origin story about the Aftermath project that grew out of a workshop I took with the photographer Sam Abel for photographers working on long-term projects, in which she said, what impact do you want your work to have? What impact? And as a reporter, I could have told you, I mean, I'd had stories that had made huge change in the world, but as a photographer, I came into it under such personal terms out of a very broken space in my own life that I was like, I don't know. And then I was like, as Sam asked that question, I was like, I know what I want. I want young photographers to realize they can cover the aftermath. You know, that's as important as conflict photography. And I thought, it was like, that's a really good answer. And I, like, overnight kind of lived with that. And I woke up in the morning, I was like, yeah, right. There's no way you're going to get that kind of impact. Nobody knows who you are. At this point, I didn't even know that this was going to become a book. It was just like, so that's just like a pipe dream, Sarah. You know, what are you going to do about that? And every time I talk about starting the Aftermath project, I say I have no idea why the filter was not present in my mind on this particular day that said, WTF, you know, like, what are you thinking and why do you think you can do this? But the next thing that occurred to me as I was like, how do you get there, was I can start a grant program. And it took about 3 or 4 years for it to come to life. Different steps of that story I can tell you about. But the Aftermath project was started. We gave our first grant in 2007. You can see that my early writing kind of emerges and helps frame what the Aftermath project is about. War is only half the story. We do a book every year. We give a grant every year, and we publish a book every year. This is our most recent book, Volume 8. It features the work of our grant winner and finalists from 2014. This was a stunning project by Luca Locatelli, whose premise, it was a really, really interesting one. It was the first time we'd had it submitted, something like that. His premise was that the aftermath of sort of the war on terror, the ongoing war on terror, and the aftermath of 9/11 was a boom in the business of war. And this is a picture made at a weapons fair. Now I'm going to step forward just a teeny bit before we circle back to the Aftermath project to say that it's a pretty tough thing to start a nonprofit in which you give money to other people about an issue that you care about as a photographer. I once was on a panel with the 7 Photo Agency where they were talking about having business plans, and I was like, well, here's how not to have a business plan. You have an issue you really love, and then raise money to give it to other people. So it has been a constant conflict in my experience in that way. I'm incredibly grateful to have been able to curate this project for 10 years now, but I had to find a way to be able to keep doing my own work. I was really fortunate. I had a funder and then a Guggenheim to complete this project, Forgiveness and Conflict, Lessons from Africa, in which I worked in post-conflict African countries exploring forgiveness traditions. Out of this work, I also wound up becoming a documentary filmmaker. I made a documentary film about a program in Sierra Leone that is astonishing. Another side story. But it was supported by Sundance. It came out at South by Southwest. It did a great job, but it kind of detoured me between that and the Aftermath project. It detoured me from this work until, this is northern Uganda, until I got the Guggenheim that allowed me to finish it. It took me a while. I just finished it in the fall. But this is people back before the Stop Konya 2012 campaign, one of the most misguided campaigns in like modern history. In this camp, these are IDPs who've been, the civil war that's gone on there's been for 25 years, and the question that's just been asked, and this is on the forgiveness tour that the Lord's Resistance Army made to ask forgiveness of the people, slightly manipulative thing, but nonetheless the people's response is what is staggering. The question that's just been asked is, who here forgives Joseph Kony and the LRA? And the next question is, who here wants the ICC, the International Criminal Court, out of Uganda? So I loved about Christie's project, that knowing when she went to Ethiopia that she didn't have the answers, that she needed to find out what was needed locally. I mean, who among us would have thought that, a mill grain would be their answer? The project includes a collaboration with an ex-girl soldier looking for forgiveness in Sierra Leone. She shot pictures herself. She had an astonishing grasp of metaphor. This is me, this baby lies the same way I did. She knows my story, how I felt when I was raped. That's exactly how I lied down in the road and begged the rebels not to rape me. So this is a chapter in the work that's a collaboration. Landscapes in South Africa. Everybody said to me, oh, you mean like the TRC? When I told them what I was working on, I was like, no, I don't. That was a very Western process. But I knew I needed to link it to help people understand what the rest of the work I was doing. So this was a series of landscapes of historical meaning in South Africa that ask the question of what a landscape of reconciliation will look like. Too long to tell you what they're all about. And then in Rwanda, the final chapter of the work last fall, Rwanda is a very, very, very troubled country that we have allowed to happen because of our guilt about the genocide. And there's so much hidden on the surface in Rwanda, and that's what these photos, that's one from it, all shot on an iPhone. And then, because you need to breathe if you're doing this kind of work, if you're doing work that's about social issues or about other people, you need to keep your joy of photography. At least that's what I very much needed. And a few months ago, I launched 10X Editions, which is a little tiny micro press, I call it, that is handmade and limited edition books. And it started out with mine. They're handmade accordion books. This all grew out of the Africa book that I made to go with my Guggenheim work. And now I have guest artists as well. And we do printed books that are 50 in editions of 50, and the handmade accordion books are editions of 10. That's my joy. That's what fuels me. Now, as a photographer. So to go back, you can bring the lights up. Because I've been asked to talk about project to nonprofit, I told you the origin story, that aha moment, which in many ways was like, oh, Sarah, what were you thinking moment of like, I'll start a grant program. And I did, and that's because a lot of people believed in what the conversation I wanted to create, and I was able to articulate it clearly. So for anybody who's thinking of how you take a project to a nonprofit status, I'm just going to run through some of the basic things, and if you want to guide me in certain ways, feel free to ask. But essentially, you need to know that there are legal and financial issues. You need to have somebody file you as a 501c3, and then there are financial and corporate responsibilities that you have every year. So you file 990 tax forms. So in your mind, it's not just this great cause that you're doing, and these are all things I learned step by step. But there's a big chunk of your time that goes towards that. If you want to, and this I suppose applies to fundraising in your work as well, as opposed to just starting a nonprofit, but you need to frame your work as something that identifies a new conversation. Greg certainly had that with the stateless people. Chrissy's went into a really micro, very specific, I'm helping this community in Ethiopia. But with my framing of the conversation, war is only half the story. That was people, it was like naming the elephant in the room. It did not exist really in the photojournalism world or the photo documentary world as a conversation or as a type of photography. So I could say it clearly, and people could go, oh yeah, wait, why don't we know more about that? And then the second thing was to create, and again, it would be with projects and project funding as you're writing grant proposals or whatever else, I get sort of a mission statement, not like a high-tech world mission statement, but one that really clearly stated what the Aftermath Project is about. And it includes within it, all of this is on our website, theaftermathproject.org, but my mission statement was very clearly to change the way the media covers conflict and to educate the public about the true cost of war and the real price of peace. Sorry about this, popping peace. And then the next step in building a nonprofit or in looking for funding for your work is impact. Like how are you going to get to the place you want to go? You've sort of heard a lot of comments about this morning from Tom speaking earlier on that great chart that he had, Greg talking about how he's done things at Christie's very localized work. But I said, so the way we're going to get there, the way we're going to change the way the media covers conflict and the way we're going to educate the public is we have an annual grant program that is actually, so we're helping create the work. And then we do an annual book. So it's not just you don't give a grant and the work sits on a shelf if it doesn't get published, which is most of the grants in the photo world don't have an outcome with them. So we have that outcome. We do a book. The book goes to photojournalism and peace building programs. We send it, Generally, we means I, but like we, includes that general body of people of my board and, the funders who've helped us, who've been amazing. Photo Wings has been a great funder and supporter of us as well. But the books are sent pro bono to these peace building and journalism programs, to museum curators, to industry professionals, book editors. It's about 350 get sent out. So I'm giving you, here's my track for change. And this, I guarantee you, this is what funders are going to look for. And Open Society has funded us for many years, the National Endowment for the Arts. It's given 3 or 4 grants. I've run 4 or 5 Kickstarter campaigns. Photo Wings has supported us, Compton Foundation. But everybody that you're going to get money from, or you're going to ask for money, wants to know those things. So you have, it's like your statement, like what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it is what matters, and that matters in absolutely every grant proposal you'll write for anybody, or any partnership you want to build with a nonprofit. Fundraising is something we can talk more about. I'm just conscious of time because we went over this morning, but there's crowdfunding to talk about, grants to talk about, and raising individual donations, which is something that I did a lot with Blue Earth at the time because they had the nonprofit status. And my God, there was a million ways to do small crowdfunding things, which I think will come up in some of the afternoon little breakout sessions. And so what I'll leave you with is that the Aftermath Project is at its 10th anniversary. We've funded 10 years worth of amazing post-conflict stories. We have created a conversation in the photojournalism world that has allowed Aftermath to be understood as an issue and something that is covered. We have suspended the grant giving as of this year to concentrate on the 10th anniversary activities, which will be a commercial photography book with Dowie Lewis Publishing, my first choice for a publisher, and a traveling exhibition with the best, exhibition management team in the business. I've had to raise more money than I've ever had to raise for our work. I've raised about $200,000 so far, and I'm still short. A lot of this period of time, for many, many years, I did it without a salary. You need people, you need a partner in your life. I'm amazed at sometimes how I did this because I'm divorced and I don't have family money, and I'm just not somebody who quits on things, and sometimes that's good and sometimes that's bad. But I've reached this 10-year point. As I look at the successes, those I see as the successes. I'm looking forward to the coming 2 years in which this conversation about aftermath issues finally is taken out to an even broader audience beyond the photo worlds. But I've failed in building an organization. I'm not an administrator. There is some capacity in my being that knows how to do this, build the organization, kind of find funders, make the message, get it out there. But I'm not an organization builder, so I don't have a staff. I don't have a paid staff. The Aftermath Project right now is like Sara Terry's vision, Sara Terry's thing. For this to live as an organization, it needs to not be my organization. And I know that, and I've tried to find people to get that and take it on and move it forward. I haven't found them yet. It's always been a very serendipitous journey for the Aftermath Project, so I'm thinking within the 2 years, 2 to 3 years of our 10th anniversary work, some person may come forward and go, oh my God, what? That's not going to continue? We need that to continue. And I'll go, yes. And here's some people that you should think about hiring as a director, not me, because I need to go, do photography again, or more of it. And but I'll stay on your board forever, and I'll be your spokesperson. So it's a pretty complicated road if you take an issue that you're passionate about and turn it into something that helps other people do the work that you love and want to do yourself. When I got pissy at times about the Aftermath Project, there'd be times I'd be just like swearing up a storm, cussing photographers for being like, why couldn't they just contribute $10 to a Kickstarter campaign? And, give up a beer, because I'm just like, who am I, I'm doing this to raise money for photographers. And I remember just the one time I had this incredible realization of how many people have a vision or have an issue that they care about and are given the kind of resources that I was given, have been given. I mean, I had to work to get them. I had to write great grant proposals. But I don't know how many people have the opportunity to curate a conversation for 10 years that's in collaboration with the photographers who've done the work and the funders who've made it happen, you know, something exists now that didn't exist before. And that's a pretty remarkable gift to be given. It's on my, I'm with the people who think you need to count the things you're grateful for. And the gratitude starts with having been a Blue Earth sponsored project. So thank you, Blue Earth.